Winning Blueprint presents
In the Lab Room.
Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. It seems so foreign to say that these days, as it's been a long time since I've been here in the lab room talking to you on this very program. It's been too long, in fact. And so today we're making this the In the Lab Room Extravaganza because there's so much news that has passed since the last time I've been in front of you doing this very program. And so I'm going to cover everything that I've missed over the last week and a half, plus some of the things that are current and have made recent news. So I'm not going to delay. Let's get right to business. First things first, Brian Urlacher, after 13 years of service to the Chicago Bears, decides to hang it up from the National Football League. I think it's a great decision because he couldn't play for another team. I just couldn't see it. I had said all along throughout this process that Urlacher could not suit up for another team in the National Football League. So if it wasn't the Bears, then he needed to just go home. And I thought it was going to be the Bears all along. I didn't think that at the end of the day, they were going to allow him to move on to another franchise. But I was wrong. There's new management. There's a new regime in Chicago. Same GM, same ownership. However, a new head coach, new coaching staff, new philosophy and mentality in Chicago. And they weren't giving in to Urlacher's demands. He's an aging veteran player in this league, or at least he was. And so they said, look, for what you can bring to this football team, and really his best value to the team was leadership and veteran presence in that locker room, more so than his on-the-field exploits. And so they're like, look, this is what you're worth to us. They slid him a number across the table. Urlacher wasn't happy with that number. In fact, he felt disrespected by that number and decided that it wasn't going to be enough to keep him in Chicago. But in this day and age, there's not a lot of work out there for a 36-year-old linebacker. And so I didn't know what Urlacher was thinking, that him being on the market was going to raise a lot of interest or not. But just because you're Brian Urlacher doesn't mean that 7 teams are going to come calling because your name rings a bell around the league. No. Teams know that you're 36 years old. They know that you have chronic back and knee issues, and there's no reason to bark up that tree. So Urlacher did the smart thing. Look, no need in dragging this whole process out, making it an elongated process and making this thing ugly. Look, the Bears and Brian Urlacher belong together. Had he went somewhere else, this could have turned into a Brett Favre and Green Bay type of soap opera where you want to reconcile this thing later on down the road. There should be none of that with Brian Urlacher. He is a Chicago Bear. He exemplifies what a Chicago Bear linebacker, middle linebacker especially, should look like. And to me, there's no doubt that he needed to retire a Bear, and that's exactly what he did. Brian Urlacher, after 13 years of service to the Chicago Bears, hanging up from the National Football League. I've heard debates about, is Brian Urlacher a Hall of Famer? Is Brian Urlacher a Hall of Famer? Are you kidding me? The question is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? That's what you should be asking. Not if this man is a Hall of Famer, but when will he get in? Will it be first, second, third ballot? Whatever the case may be, there's no doubt in my mind that Brian Urlacher is a Hall of Famer. He'll get in. There's no disputing that. It's just a matter of when, not if. Great career for Brian Urlacher. I wish him nothing but the best. And he was one of the best to do it at the middle linebacker position, one of the best I've seen do it. And I think a lot of people really don't give him the credit that he deserves at that middle linebacker position for his size. You're talking about a 6'4" guy that could go sideline to sideline. And remember, he was a safety in college. He was that rover type of player at New Mexico. And so making that transition to the linebacker position, he was running around at that size. You don't see that every day. You don't see 6'4" linebackers running sideline to sideline, picking off passes like a natural hands catcher and making plays with the football, which is what Urlacher did for 13 years for the Chicago Bears. And so he had an illustrious career, and he will be in Canton soon enough. Will it be 5 or 6 years? That's the question. So we move on to more news in the National Football League. I talked about this the last time we talked, and it's been a while, so you probably don't remember, but Dwight Freeney was going on his way to San Diego to meet with the Chargers to talk about potentially joining that franchise and that club after the injury. And remember, Melvin Ingram tore his ACL in camp about a week ago, and so we knew that they were going to have a void at the outside linebacker position. And again, I didn't think it was a great fit because, of course, Freeney played in the 3-4 defense for the first time in his career with the Indianapolis Colts in 2012. Didn't fare that well in that system, but as we know, in the National Football League, teams play multiple defensive fronts. You'll see 4-3, you'll see 3-4, you'll see nickel, dime packages, and so there's going to be ways to get Dwight Freeney on the field and in a comfortable, natural position to rush the quarterback. And so I don't know what the San Diego Chargers had in store for him, but they did sign Dwight Freeney to a 2-year, $8.75 million deal. And so look for Dwight Freeney to be looking to cause some havoc off the edges for the San Diego Chargers in the 2013 season and maybe beyond. He did sign a 2-year deal. Who's to say that he actually performs for 2 seasons with the San Diego Chargers? We'll see. But I wasn't a big fan of the move then when it was being consummated. I'm not a big fan of the move now because I don't know what Dwight Freeney can bring to the table for the San Diego Chargers. But we will see. We will see. The Chargers have to have some kind of plan for Dwight Freeney, or else they would not have pursued him in free agency. So we'll see what the Chargers have up their sleeve. But while we're on the topic of injuries, Melvin Ingram going down with that ACL tear, Michael Crabtree tore his Achilles tendon at San Francisco 49ers minicamp. And they feared the worst. They were hoping for the best. They thought that they might have gotten away, but they knew it was something serious. It, in fact, was an Achilles tear for Michael Crabtree. That is a devastating blow for the San Francisco 49ers. Here's a guy that was emerging and starting to become that budding star that they thought he could be when they drafted him in the top 10 of the draft. And so this was something that they could not have foreseen happening. But that Anquan Boldin trade looks that much better now. It looms that much larger. Now that Crabtree goes down, they did not bring in Anquan Boldin to be the man. They brought him in to be the man to the man. They brought him in to be Robin to Michael Crabtree's Batman. And now Anquan Boldin is going to have to be Batman, which he's comfortable doing. He was doing that in Baltimore for the last 3 seasons or so. So he doesn't have a problem doing that. But at this stage of his career, he was looking to be a very good complementary piece. Now he's going to have to step into that starring role once again, which I'm pretty sure he does not mind. He's a guy that can make plays, does demand the football, and so he'll have no problem stepping up. What I worry about is who are those secondary guys that are going to step up now? Because everyone gets bumped up a slot. Everyone's now out of their comfort zone, maybe with the exception of Anquan Boldin. So now a guy like A.J. Jenkins, who was redshirting last year, he has to step up. No more free meals, no more free ride. He's got to earn his keep in the National Football League. Time for him to step up, make some plays. 49ers also drafted Quentin Patton. Here's another guy that can help you fill that void. So you got Manningham and Kyle Williams coming off of injuries themselves. So you get a group of guys, and collectively, I think they need to step up as a group and fill that void for Michael Crabtree. Not one of those guys by themselves can fill in that production that Crabtree brought to the table. But as a group, I think they can do the job. 49ers, one of the deepest teams in the National Football League, can really cushion and impact this kind of blow. They can deaden the impact of it with all of the depth that they have. But guys are going to have to collectively step up and make plays to really take that pressure off of Colin Kaepernick and the San Francisco 49ers passing attack. It's going to be a tough job, but as a group, I think they can get it done. San Francisco 49ers are hurting right now because Michael Crabtree was their go-to guy down the stretch and in the second half of the season when Colin Kaepernick took over at the quarterback position. I think he's going to be able to return in 2013. Remember, Terrell Suggs, much like Crabtree, tore his Achilles in the offseason, was able to come back in the 2012 season. So he did it in the offseason in 2012, was able to play in the 2012 campaign in the National Football League. So I expect Crabtree to come back. Now, it's a different position, different animal, but Terrell Suggs is a lot older than Michael Crabtree. I think Crabtree will be able to heal a lot faster than Terrell Suggs was able to do. And I know it's a different position, a lot more stopping, starting, cutting, going than at the outside linebacker / defensive end position, but I think Crabtree can make it happen. I expect to see him in 2013, but in the meantime, the 49ers are going to have to find a way to get guys to step up in the absence of Michael Crabtree. That is a huge loss for a team that was on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl championship a season ago. And while we're on the topic of injuries, this is more current. Today at Houston Texans camp, Arian Foster went down and had to be carted off the field with a strained calf muscle. Now, look, that's very minor in the grand scheme of things. We're talking about guys tearing ACLs and Achilles. A strained calf is something that with rest, he'll be fine. This is the time. If you're going to strain a calf, this is the time to do it. You much rather have a strained calf than a torn ACL or a torn Achilles. So the Texans will take that news as a sigh of relief because they can't afford to lose Arian Foster. That's one of the players that the Texans just can ill afford to lose. There aren't many players in this league that are irreplaceable, but on that football team, he's one of them. And so the Texans need a healthy Arian Foster, so he's definitely going to be sidelined for a while with that strained calf muscle in Houston. Henry Hynoski, Giants fullback, tore his MCL, busted up his knee as well, has a chip fracture in his kneecap. So a lot of injuries happening around the National Football League. He expects to be back before the season starts. I don't expect to see him for at least the first 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks of the season. But wishful thinking by Henry Hynoski. Shoot for the stars. Try to get back as fast as you can. But a lot of guys going down to injuries. Let's hope that this pace drastically slows down because there's guys falling and dropping left and right in these mini camps. We haven't even gotten to training camp yet. But like I told a lot of these veteran players, look, just wait out the process. Freeney did that. He got a job in San Diego. I told Charles Woodson the same thing. We'll talk about him here in a second. And I'm telling John Abraham and all the rest of these guys that are out there, just wait out the process. Guys are going to get injured. Teams are going to make moves. You're going to get phone calls from teams around the National Football League eventually. That phone will ring. You need to be in shape and ready to seize that opportunity when it comes. So I've always said this. If you're a good football player, teams will call you eventually if you still have something to offer in the National Football League, because guys are always going down. And there are a lot of players out there that can still help a football team in the upcoming season. And speaking of Charles Woodson, he went back to the place he called home for the first 7 years of his career. Charles Woodson took a trip out to Oakland, and the fans in Oakland just embraced him and showed so much love. They were out at the facility waiting on him. And I think, the nostalgia of the whole situation really got to Charles Woodson. It really made him feel wanted. And, a lot of times with these players, the ego gets involved, and it's all like being recruited out of high school all over again. You want to feel wanted. When players go into free agency, you always hear the term, I felt wanted by this team that I ended up signing a contract with. I felt wanted. They wanted me. And in Oakland, the Raiders wanted Charles Woodson back. And they showed their appreciation and their love for Charles Woodson by standing out there waiting. And I think that kind of overtook him because he got an offer from the Denver Broncos. And it was a little bit more than the veteran minimum. And he could have taken that deal. It would have been a solid contract for a team that's a contender right now. And we know the Raiders aren't contending for anything in 2013. And Charles Woodson, of course, he knows that as well. And so it was all about feeling wanted, where I want to be. At this point in his career, he's done everything that there is to do. Defensive Rookie of the Year, NFL MVP, Super Bowl champion. He's done it all. So now he's just looking to be wanted. Somewhere where I want to be, and that place for him happens to be somewhere that he called home for the first 7 years of his career, out in Oakland with the Raiders. He signs a one-year deal to play the safety position for the Oakland Raiders. Should be fun seeing Charles Woodson back in the silver and black. So, again, the phone will ring for these aging veterans that still have a lot left in the tank. Just hang in there. Keep yourself in shape so when that opportunity arises, you can pounce on it. So that's an example of two veterans who were waiting out the process. Dwight Freeney getting his deal in San Diego, Charles Woodson getting his in Oakland. Both of those guys will see each other twice a year in the AFC West division. Let's switch gears for a second. I want to talk a little bit about the Arizona Cardinals. Larry Fitzgerald came out last week and said, hey, 2012 was by far my most frustrating season of my career. Can you blame him? This is a guy that doesn't say much, doesn't complain. He's had about 13 or 14 different quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks, that is, in Arizona in his career, and you haven't heard a peep out of this guy. And, of course, we saw the damage he was able to do when he actually had a competent quarterback under center in Kurt Warner. This guy was the best receiver in the league, hands down. There wasn't anyone close. And we've got some good ones in the league. Andre Johnson has been as consistent and steady a receiver as we've seen in this league. Yet, I thought Larry Fitzgerald separated himself from the rest of the pack when Kurt Warner was the quarterback. I mean, this guy was extraordinary. He single-handedly put this team on his back in the postseason. He had a postseason for the ages when they got all the way to the Super Bowl before losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, that playoff run that he had, you won't see a receiver do it any better than that. That was a phenomenal stretch of football by Larry Fitzgerald, and that's just, to me, the tip of the iceberg. This guy has so much potential, so much talent, but yet he doesn't get to show us on a weekly basis because of the garbage that the Arizona Cardinals put on the field at the quarterback position. And so he had a right to feel frustrated, and that's the type of stuff that makes you want to quit. And no one's a quitter. But remember Barry Sanders? To me, by far the best player ever in terms of being aesthetically pleasing. There was no one better than Barry Sanders for me. I mean, I could sit down and watch Barry Sanders all day. And he was one of the reasons why I fell in love with the National Football League at such a young age. I just loved watching Barry Sanders play football. He holds a special place in my heart, and he just quit. He didn't want to play anymore. He lost the love for the game because the Detroit Lions were such a bad football team. They weren't trying to win. It was hard to want to play when the guys and the organization around you doesn't do their part. You're doing everything you can in your power to try and help your team win, but the organization around you isn't doing theirs. It just makes it not fun anymore. Who likes to lose all the time? And so when you see a guy like Larry Fitzgerald get frustrated, you hate to see that because slowly you see the love of the game being stripped away from them. And it couldn't have been fun. I mean, there were times when Larry Fitzgerald was 3 or 4 yards open. I mean, he separated from defenders by about 2, 3, maybe even 4 steps at times, and these guys could not get him the football. We all remember John Skelton being benched when the Arizona Cardinals were actually in the lead at Atlanta. So that tells you how bad he must have been performing for you to be benched when your team is actually ahead. And Larry Fitzgerald ran a beautiful post corner route in the end zone. Was wide open. He had left the cornerback somewhere by the goalpost. Was wide open at the corner of the end zone. And John Skelton, I think he underthrew him by about 4 yards, or he overthrew him out of bounds by about 4 yards. Either way, it wasn't even close. And all you could do was shake your head. Ken Wisenhunt yanked him out of the game immediately. And so That's how bad it was in Arizona. I mean, they lost a game 58-0 in 2012. It was a horrendous season, bad quarterbacking. And to think they started the season out in Arizona 4-0 and proceeded to lose 9 consecutive games. So it was more than a rough season on Larry Fitzgerald. It was his most frustrating campaign of his career, and I don't blame him. And so let's hope that with a new regime, Bruce Arians in as head coach, Carson Palmer in at the quarterback position, let's hope that Larry Fitzgerald can be reinvigorated in the 2013 season, because he's one of the best in the National Football League, and I love to watch Larry Fitzgerald play the game of football. Now, I told you we were talking about the Arizona Cardinals. Their running back, Ryan Williams, remember, he was drafted about 3 seasons ago. He's going into his 3rd season in the National Football League, but yet you really haven't seen him. Tore his ACL 2 seasons ago in his rookie campaign. Came back, didn't feel quite right, messed his shoulder up, sat out the rest of that season as well. And so he really hasn't been in the league quite yet. You really haven't seen what the Cardinals were looking for when they drafted this guy early on in the draft when they selected him. So they're expecting a lot out of Ryan Williams, and they just haven't gotten it yet. And he was very candid and honest. This is something that we don't see a lot of with NFL players, where they're just genuinely and brutally honest with you. And he said, look, I was scared to run the ball when I came back from my ACL injury. Literally, I was scared to run the football. And you don't hear that. You don't get guys who just honestly tell you, hey, look, man, I was afraid. After the injury, I didn't trust my leg. I didn't trust other guys around it. I was flat out terrified. And as a running back, it's your job to run the football. And this guy said, hey, in one of the games early on in the season, they called a toss play, which is one of the plays that I hate because it exposes me outside, and it exposes that leg that I had surgery on, that ACL that I tore. And they called the toss, and I was coming around the corner, and he saw a specific defender coming, and he just got scared. He said, look, I totally forgot about the ball, and I just was looking to protect my knee. And he fumbled the football. They lost the ball, and look, in this league, it's tough. It just reminds you that this game is also mental as well. And the Arizona Cardinals were going through some things last season, and Ryan Williams himself was going through some mental issues. He said, look, I'm so glad that I hurt my shoulder. And it's never good to hurt any part of your body, but he said it was like a blessing in disguise for me because it gave me an opportunity to fully heal my ACL, to put that trust back into my knee that I had before the injury. And I don't think I really had that confidence that I needed to run the football the way that I know I can in this league. In 2012, I didn't have that confidence. Now I do. I'm fully healthy. I'm ready to go. And I'm over that stage. But that's one of the first times I've ever heard a running back say, hey, look, man, I was scared to run the football. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was terrified, and I wasn't even thinking about holding on to the ball. I was worried about my knee, and I just let the football go. That is crazy. But, again, it just reminds you of how physical this game is in the National Football League and how sometimes mentally, after an injury, you're not all back like you think you are. You know, some guys block that stuff out of their minds. Hey, it happened. It's not likely to happen again, and I'm just going to go out and play as if it never happened in the first place. Other guys, like Carson Palmer, remember when he tore his ACL against the Steelers in the playoff game, Kimo von Oelhoffen fell on his leg. He was never the same quarterback after that injury. He was always a little wary of all the garbage around him in the pocket. He used to be a guy that stood tall, 6'5", and was looking to push the ball down the field. After that injury, he was not the same guy. He wasn't as accurate. He wasn't willing to stand in the pocket and stare down the gun barrel. And once trash and garbage started to form around his legs, he wanted to know what was going on down there. He'd take his eyes off down the field, and worry about what was around him. And all of a sudden, Carson Palmer wasn't the same guy. So after an injury, a catastrophic one to your knee, and in this case, we're talking about ACL injuries, the mental tricks, the mental aspect of the game becomes that much tougher. And this game is already tough as it is, but the mental aspect of the game becomes that much tougher on these players. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that. And Ryan Williams, in saying what he said, kind of reminded all of us that, hey, it's not as easy as you think to come back from an ACL injury. And I tell people this all the time, and I've said this on different platforms on all of my shows. Look, I think we have become numb to guys tearing their ACLs, and we expect them to just come back. This isn't Tommy John surgery. Okay, this isn't baseball. You don't tear up your elbow, go have Tommy John surgery, and come back better and stronger than ever. That's not how this works. You tear your ACL, you may never be the same player again. Everyone isn't Adrian Peterson. Everyone isn't Robert Griffin III. You're not going to just heal and mend up and come back stronger than ever. And I think sometimes people take it for granted, oh, he tore his ACL, he'll be back, and he'll be fine. No. And that's why I'm trying to caution people on the Darrelle Revis. Hey, he might be back. He might be just as good as he was before. But you don't know. You cannot assume. So Ryan Williams reminded us of that. Hey, sometimes it's not all physical. It's mental as well. So very interesting stuff coming out of Arizona last week. And I felt like I wanted to touch on that because it was some interesting quotes coming out of Arizona a week ago. So now we move to the Jets and their minicamp, and Mark Sanchez being atrocious. And not to be outdone, Geno Smith isn't really a world beater himself yet. And so who knows what's going to happen in New York. I think that quarterback situation is going to be an absolute mess. But I think Geno Smith is going to be your guy moving forward. I just don't think Mark Sanchez has it. And like I said, you can't qualify nor quantify it. It isn't tangible. You can't touch it. You can't taste it. You can't smell it. But you know when you see it. And Mark Sanchez does not possess it. Now you listen to his teammates talk. He's the first guy in the film room, last to leave. He's a gym rat. He studies. He works hard. I just don't see it translate to the football field. And so you got teammates really backing this guy. And so I want to believe in Mark Sanchez because I've been one of the biggest Mark Sanchez doubters around. And I'll be the first to stand in line and bash Mark Sanchez because he's in all the magazines and he's doing all the off-the-field things, but he's not performing on the field. You can do whatever you like off the field. You can do whatever you like. Yeah. If you're performing on the field, I don't care what you do. Get as many endorsement deals as you can. Do whatever you want. You want to pose nude in GQ magazine? By all means, go right ahead. But just make sure you're getting it done on the football field. And Mark Sanchez is not getting it done on the football field. And so I have an issue with that. Because he's always been a guy that, and I'm not saying that he's felt like this. It just seems like perception, a lot of times is reality. He seems like he feels like he's entitled to something. I'm a first round selection. You traded up to get me. It's my job. I'm the guy. I'm going to get it done. And it just seems like it never works out that way in New York. So I'd be anxious to see how this whole quarterback situation is going to unfold because right now it's a mess. First day at camp, Sanchez threw 3 interceptions. Rex Ryan was not happy. What do you expect? The guy's a turnover machine. It's what he does. So we'll see if this saga continues. I just heard that a coordinator for the Jets came out and said, hey, this guy's accuracy is sky high right now. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't this the same guy that just threw 3 interceptions in the first day of camp? How is his accuracy sky high right now? So you've got mixed reports coming out of everywhere. At the end of the day, I think that it's Mark Sanchez's job to lose in New York. They're going to give him every opportunity to hang himself one last time. And then after he does so, Geno Smith will step in and we'll be able to see what Geno Smith can do at the quarterback position for the New York Jets. So that's a touchdown. Go ahead, throw it up. I'm going to tack on a quick extra point. Now, the NFL has decided to change the 2014 NFL draft from the last weekend in April to the first weekend in May. They're looking at right now May the 8th through the 10th as the draft weekend. And they're looking to change around the NFL off-season schedule. And they're really looking to change around the whole league schedule. Pushing the draft back, pushing the combine back, pushing free agency back, pushing everything back in the off-season for the NFL, which would push back the league year. And I think a lot of this has to do with college football. Having players declare early for the draft and kind of giving them a chance to tighten up their school and their studies and finish that up and then come on to the league. And so I think a lot of this has to do with the NCAA, as well as I think the league wants to kind of close the gap between the actual season itself and all the things that transpire in the offseason. This league is a year-round league. And the best way to have this thing continue to build up momentum and steam is to never have it really stop. And so if there's a lull after the Super Bowl, they'll allow that. Because you'll still be talking about the season and how it all transpired and how it all unfolded. And then once you get to the combine and you get to the draft, you want it to all kind of just blend together. Combine, draft, free agency, and have it just all bleed together leading up into training camp. And so if things are pushed back, and May is where the draft occurs, and then you got all the other things going down the line. If the combine is pushed back from February to March, and free agency is pushed back from the beginning of March to the end of March, or maybe the beginning of April, and the league meetings are pushed back to the week after free agency or the week before free agency, whatever the case may be, everything will get pushed back. It'll elongate the process and kind of give the NFL more traction and more ability to generate more buzz about the sport so that it can just leak right into the season. If the draft happens in May, guess what? Training camp starts in July. It'll be right there before you know it. So I think they want to tighten up the gap between the downtime in the league. And so we'll see. I guess they much rather have that gap be after the Super Bowl where everything is still kind of fresh. It'll give us more time to talk about the draft, which I feel like we already talk about ad nauseum already. So that's the one thing I wouldn't like, is that it'll give us a whole nother month to mull over the draft and pick apart each and every single player coming out. Look at every single game and you're like, come on, just make the picks already. Let's get these guys on teams and move on. So it'll make that process that much longer. But only 2014 right now has been announced, and they are in fact moving the draft in 2014 to May the 8th through the 10th. Nothing else has been moved. The combine hasn't been moved yet. Nothing's happened with free agency. Everything else is still where it normally is held and scheduled. So the combine right now is still in February. Free agency is still around March the 11th or 12th, somewhere in that general vicinity. League meetings are somewhere in that vicinity as well. So none of that has changed quite yet, but those changes could be coming here shortly as well. They're probably looming around the corner, and they might be looking to see if this goes really well. They might be looking to extrapolate this over the next 5 to 10 years and have this be the norm instead of an anomaly in 2014. So we'll see how this all works itself out, but be interesting to see how the league year is ran next season in the 2014 offseason when the draft is pushed back. Maybe the league year might be pushed back as well. Last bit of news before we get out of here. MJD, Maurice Jones-Drew, charged with battery for hitting a security officer at a restaurant. Can't we all just get along? I mean, really. Is it necessary? His buddy was with him. Security officer told him to leave a young lady alone. they got into an altercation, an argument. Security officer put Maurice Jones-Drew's friend in a headlock after I guess he had put his hands on him first. Put him in a headlock. Maurice Jones-Drew then subsequently gets up, clocks him in the jaw, knocks him out, bruises his chin and his jaw. Doesn't break any bones, but he gets charged with battery. Hey, cut it out. Get back to Jacksonville. Let's play some football, okay? What are you guys doing? Come on, stop it. Beating up flashlight cops now. Let's not do that, all right? I feel like the Michael Jordan Space Jam toy that you used to get from McDonald's. Remember that toy? Let's play some basketball. I really enjoy playing with you guys. Let's just play some football. I really enjoy watching you play the game. Let's just play some football. You didn't really play last year. Was out for most of the season. I'm ready to see Pocket Hercules back in action. Let's stop all the nonsense. Let's get back to the football field, okay? And that's going to do it for this installment of In the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. It's the Extravaganza episode. I told you there was a lot to get to. Haven't done it in a while, so had a lot to cover, but by golly, we got it all done. So, as you know, there's many ways to contact or view the show. There's Facebook. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. Check me out on Facebook. Every single video I've ever uploaded is on the Facebook page, so check it out. Also, there's Twitter. At In the Lab Room is the Twitter handle. Please follow me on Twitter. Also, there's the inbox. inthelabroom@gmail.com is the inbox. Feel free to drop me a message in the inbox directly. If you want to bypass all of the middlemen that I've talked about, all the other social media websites that I've given you, and come directly to me, that's the way to do it. inthelabroom@gmail.com, once again, is the inbox. And, of course, this is the YouTube page that you're viewing. Please subscribe to the page if you haven't already done so. There's plenty of content coming out of this show. As you already know, I'm wrapping up the NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series as we speak. I got 6 teams remaining left on the slate, so I'm looking to clean that up this week and move on to my next theme. And so I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on down the road. But that's going to do it for this lengthy edition of In the Lab Room. I told you it was an extravaganza because haven't been here in a while. A lot of things that I omitted over the time that I did not come to talk to you. But I finally have gotten a chance to come back. I'm here, and we discussed a lot today. So that's going to do it here in the lab. Remember, whether it's big or small, if it happens in the NFL, we cover it all here in the lab room. Have a good one.